When removing your overhead luggage, please be careful.
Hey NUKE Knights, this is Semifinal B between Fantasy and Flash. TVT Best of 5. How long will it last? We'll find out. I know every game's going to be about 45 minutes. Oh, you can see the terrifying scar. I noticed that before the game started, actually. The terrifying scar on the side of Flash's arm for when he had his arm surgery. Because his wrist was hurting him, they had to do a bunch of stuff in there, as you can tell. Very technical. I am a doctor, but okay, we're getting into this game. This will be Neo Ground Zero is our double map. Good times. Actually, I've been in a bad mood all day, and I still am, but I'm looking forward to working with that energy. Just frustrated and angry. Angry cast. Accepts. Up at the 10 o'clock position, and Blue was a freaking jerk of a Terran player. God, I hate this guy, whoever he is. Who are you? Flash. I hate Flash. Oh, I thought the Flash was getting ready to shoot me there. Pull out his shotgun from Terminator 2 and just blow me away. Whew, huge crowd, as always. Since we're winding down the final Brood War OSL, these venues have just been freaking packed. I can't even imagine what the final is going to be like. Because, yeah, I've been reading forum posts of people like, yeah, I'm gonna book a flight to Korea and see if I can get in on the finals. Good luck to you. I don't think that's gonna happen, but, you know, whatever. Give it a shot, why not? But Fantasy was down at the 8 o'clock position in white. Flash and Blue, Fantasy and white. And I have a boatload of stats to give to you. Stats and info. Edutainment, if you will. But okay. These two do have a storied history together. They've played 20 games between them. Fantasy has won 7 of those, and Flash has won 13. So Flash definitely has the edge. But the last time these two played each other was on the precursor to this map, Ground Zero, and Fantasy won. That was quite a few months ago, but still, it was the last time they faced each other, and Fantasy won. I think these two are on a much more even playing field than when Fantasy first started out. When Fantasy first started out, I remember a lot of people making fun of him, like, who's this newbie Terran player getting to the finals against Stork? Who's this noob? And I don't think it was till the end of the last OSL, well, not the last one, the second one after Fantasy. I'm just being confusing for no reason, but now Flash, he's going to put down a 14cc. He hasn't even put down his barracks yet, and he's going to build a command center. Crazy. Of course, Flash well known for failing epically with 14cc's in the past. But this is going to be scouted immediately by Fantasy, who is scouting up to the 10 o'clock position. Oh, he's looking for cheese first. Flash was known as the Cheater Terran. Well, not Cheater Terran, Cheesy Terran back in the day. Cheater Terran was I Love UUV, because people couldn't figure out how he was winning all the time. I Love UUV made it to 5 finals and won every single one of them. Not too shabby. But there is Fantasy chasing around the SCV that's trying to build that barracks out front and start a wall inside of the natural expansion. But Fantasy is getting the full scout of this. He'll know if he wants to pressure the front, but he's not. He's building his own command center down at his own natural expansion. So he's going to be a tad behind Flash as far as economy goes. But probably not too far. But Flash is doing some good SCV micro, keeping the SCV building the barracks at all times. And here comes a Marine. Now, the Marine might be able to get an SCV snipe or two, especially this SCV that's building the supply depot out front. It's going to be stuck in building mode, so it might get shot at by this Marine and hurt a bit by the SCV that's coming in bunker, being in the front. So that's supply depot, but it morphed magically into a bunker. And I think Flash just invented that build order. Start the supply depot, work into... Okay, never mind. But he got the bunker up, and he's going to defend that natural expansion. Good micro already from Flash. Both are starting the factories at the moment. And Fantasy is just going to head home, chasing down Flash's scout, which probably won't get too far. into Fantasy's base. There are 3 Marines now to intercept, so probably not going to get too much done there. So, yeah, there goes the SCV. SCV gets through. Flash made it by the Marine somehow. So he's going to scout everything that Fantasy is up to. Crazy, freaking map hack Flash, as always. Terminator goodness. There's a second factory on the way for Fantasy, and Flash was also working on 2 factories going inside of his main. Now how about a few more tidbits of information between these two? Since they do have such a storied history, those 20 games, they played each other in a best-of-5 series before. This was in the 2010 Big File MSL Semifinals, which Flash won 3-2, so it did get to a 5th game. Awfully close. And at around 2010, that's when you could probably say that the 2 players, Flash and Fantasy, were kind of on an even keel. Yeah, Fantasy has always been nipping at Flash's heels as the best Terran player, but only this season has he really started to show that, I think, for sure, because Fantasy hasn't lost a single game in the Tving OSL. Not one! Of course, he had the luxury of being seeded right into the round of 16, which makes that record a bit easier to keep. But anyway, let's check out what the guys are going for. See the Academy and the Armory for Fantasy, and the starport was coming up for Flash, and he hasn't built a control tower on it, so he's starting with Wraiths. Gonna send some Wraiths down the map a bit. But as I said, Fantasy has not lost a single game in this OSL, but in contrast, Flash has really not been playing like himself. He's made it up to the semifinals before, but kind of by the skin of his teeth. Is that the right expression there? Sure, why not? If it's not, I just invented an idiom. But anyway, so Flash lost a bunch of games, got caught in a tiebreaker, and he made it out of the tiebreaker, and he's made it up to this point, but still, he's been dropping some games that really shouldn't have been dropping. I mean, even recently in Pro League, his last TVT played was versus Bogus in the Pro League, which was only like a couple of weeks ago, and Flash lost that game. You can kind of tell, especially through interviews, that Flash has been focusing most of his attention and energy, on StarCraft 2, which could account for some of this. But Fantasy's been playing StarCraft 2 as well, and he's still been rocking it, so who knows. But Fantasy's moving up with some Goliaths and a couple of tanks, going to try to corner Flash, but Flash has mostly tanks, which will be able to destroy this army once Siege comes into play. There's another barracks being built by Flash. He lost his barracks as it floated over, so he's got to get that going if he wants to build more factories. Tanks sieging up, getting that scouting marine. So Fantasy at least knows where the tanks are at the moment. Of course, the tanks just unsieged, fell back a bit. Doesn't want to get a sneak attack from Fantasy. Could definitely just scan, siege up, and catch a bunch of those tanks out front. But the Wraith is going to help a lot with Flash's vision. It's going to give him a big, wide range of vision, which a Terran player can usually just get from scans, floating barracks, or engineering bays, and Wraiths. Wraiths are probably the best option since they're so fast, and they can attack at the same time. Alright, base being built by Flash up at the 12 o'clock position, getting that third going, transferring over with his SCVs already, so that base is going to be mining soon. Pretty good tank line from Flash, as he's probably just going to try to work his way east. Keep building bases up at the top half of the map and try to out-macro Fantasy. He did have his second base up quicker, so he can kind of snowball that into victory if he holds on to the bases and keeps away the harassment anyway. But the tanks killing a Vulture there, I believe. Fantasy's coming up with his Vultures. I don't think the Vultures are speed upgraded yet. No, they are not. But once they are speed upgraded, you're probably going to see Fantasy shine quite a bit. It's his best unit by far. It definitely controls Vultures much better than any other Terran player. Now he does have speed, so he's going to try to dart around and get some harassment on. Fantasy is building his third base over at the 9 o'clock position that was scanned by Flash, and that's right next to his base, so if he builds a dropship, he'll be able to get there fairly easily, but probably not on the ground. Fantasy has a line of tanks right outside of that 9 o'clock, fending off the Wraith with a single Goliath as well. And Fantasy has his starport up, probably working up to science vessels. Well, not science vessels, I mean a science facility. So, okay. Supply depot was being built by the dudes, and Fantasy was holding the high ground area up at the 9 o'clock with a couple of tanks. Got a couple of tanks on the high ground. Man, Flash is looking kind of intense today. He does have a dropship out, but he's going the long way around, which means he might try to drop inside the main with something. But this could be actually scouted miraculously by Fantasy. Is Fantasy going to find this? Oh, he's so close to scouting this drop. He was moving up to the 12 o'clock position, I think, or just trying to get closer to that with his vultures when he almost spotted that dropship. But let's see if Fantasy knows this is coming, if he scanned it or something, because he was moving up there. But Fantasy, if he didn't know about it before, he's going to know about it now. Second dropship on the way down to the natural expansion. 4 vultures dropped inside the main for Flash. Flash gets 3 vultures out at the natural expansion, so he's going straight for the SCVs, straight for the economy. But Fantasy quick to run in with his own vultures to intercept this. Very quick reaction to run vultures to each base, so kind of minimalizes the SCV casualties there. So well done from Fantasy. Flash did get some harassment done though as he's moving out. Ooh, got to be a little bit careful. The mines, of course, with the amount of tanks that are out, that makes mine sniping much easier as long as you A move. Gotta keep A moving. But one mine could take out all these tanks, and Flash has to be mindful of that. But Fantasy is secure over here with the tank line. The tank's getting awfully close to siege range of each other, but not quite there yet, I think. Let's see. A Valkyrie built by Flash. He has a Valkyrie out, anticipating a lot of Wraiths incoming from Fantasy. And he built the dropship, so Flash, even though he started with Wraiths, he's kind of veering away from that at the moment. He does have 1 Wraith still, and the Valk out to kill these Wraiths is definitely going to surprise Fantasy, if he hasn't scouted it, of course, but Flash making his advances into the middle, got the Valkyrie out to protect these tanks, but only about 4 tanks left in that line, so yeah, Flash is going to be held back for now. He does have tanks, though, to the eastern side of Fantasy's tank line, right next to the 9 o'clock position. So there was a Vulture trying to kill the SCV that was up there building a new base. God, there's a lot of people there. Crazy. So, still a nice line. Fantasy is holding his ground for now, but Flash is a very aggressive player in TVT. Super aggressive. He never lets up. Especially when it comes to unsieging his tanks and just blasting forward. I've seen him do that in a lot of TVTs. But he is kind of a headstrong player in that regard. He never lets up, and sometimes that is his downfall in TVTs, especially recently. Has dropped a couple of TVTs. When Flash, I think his record was like 21 or 22 wins in a row in TVT or something ridiculous like that. It was eventually broken by someone like Sky High, something like that. Or really, I'm trying to remember back. But he took out over 20 Terran in a row, which is absolutely nuts. So he is definitely a force to be feared, but Fantasy is doing his best to harass up at the 2 o'clock position, trying to shut down that base a bit, as Flash is taking 1/2 the map. Fantasy trying to keep up. He's building his 6 o'clock position, sniping the Vultures that are coming down to harass the 6 o'clock. Did I say 12 o'clock earlier? I don't know. 6 o'clock anyway, as Fantasy trying to work his way east as well. Build as many bases as he possibly can to keep up with Flash's macro, which is legendary, by the way. But Flash has quite a bit of population over Fantasy at the moment. 177 over 143. Fantasy's 143. Here comes Fantasy. He's grouping up. He has a lot of troops up here, going first with his Vultures. A lot of tanks coming in for him, trying to surround everything that's in the middle. Does an excellent job sniping that tank line, so Flash got to bring everything in. He's really got to group up. But now he's going for the counterattack up at the 2 o'clock and trying to protect his 2 o'clock position. From Fantasy, but he's really got to bring everything together before Fantasy gets close to that natural expansion. You can't let that tank line get too close. Oh, it's creeping up. Fantasy creeping closer to the natural. He's still way behind in population, but the amount of tanks he has out front is just scary. So Flash, as you can see, Flash's well, his troops are kind of split, and he can't really move them, or he'd risk getting destroyed by Fantasy's tank line. But there's some SCVs trying to transfer at just the wrong time. SCVs stop dead in their tracks and run away. It was like a cartoon. You just see their legs flailing while they're standing in one spot. Anyway, well, that was dumb. Science Vessel out for Fantasy. So he was going for Science Vessels. My flub earlier was correct. So he has a Science Vessel out, which will definitely help with vision, but it would be good for defensive matrix as well. I doubt Irradiate would come in handy very much, unfortunately. Well, I could go for the SCVs, I guess. It'll just take longer to do. Eraser trick doesn't work quite as well as you would imagine. SCVs, super strong. But here comes Fantasy doing a good harass up at the 2 o'clock position, is trying to slow Flash down. As Fantasy's doing a good job keeping toe-to-toe with bases, I'll give him that. Yeah, he's got the 6 o'clock pretty comfortably mining. He's built a turret there, trying to protect against any future drops. And he's working on the 5 o'clock position as well. Going to try to get that up. As here comes Flash working out with his Vultures, trying to lay the mines next to the tanks and get out of there before the mines drag into a huge clump of Vultures. Always makes my skin crawl when I see that happen, when the Vultures lay the mines to kill the opponent, and all the Vultures end up dying in the blast. Not very good trade-off there. There's a Science Vessel out front for Fantasy. We're about to see what that does here in a bit. Let's see. A drop ship coming up for Fantasy. He's probably going to drop some Vultures behind one of these bases. Drops a couple of Vultures at that natural expansion to snipe some SCVs. Quick reaction from Flash, though. Transfers immediately from that. You see a bunch of idle SCVs from Flash up at this 2 o'clock position. Getting chased around there. Come the Valkyries in play. Of course, 4 Valkyries now from Flash. Those Valkyries might start glitching in a bit. Valkyries are not good at all in late game because they glitch like crazy and the rockets do not fire, which is why you don't see them a lot in late game. So it's good to use them in the early to mid game to maximize their effectiveness. Okay, Flash still trying to defend with tanks up at the 2 o'clock position. He's got a bunch of drop ships in play that'll help with the defense, definitely. And the Valkyries to protect the drop ships up in the air, which will be essential, because I'm pretty sure that Fantasy still has Wraiths flying around in the air. Okay, Fantasy doing his best. Oh, the Science Vessel's great for mine clearing. I kind of see where Fantasy's going with this now. Great for mine clearing in the middle. So he cleared a ton of mines there with the Vultures, which of course are not affected by the mines. Little spider mines don't know what to do when a Vulture goes by. It's like, what the hell is that? Is that a thing? Nah, that can't be a thing. That guy in the red goggles, that's not a real guy. Anyway, there's a Valkyrie that went down. Fantasy keeping on the harassment as Flash might be overextending himself. He built the 3 o'clock position and he started the 5 o'clock natural. But I'm not sure if he's going to be able to hold these bases or not. Especially considering that Fantasy, you can tell in the middle of the map that his just tank line is blocking Flash from getting to those 2 bases. So those 2 bases might not last too much longer. We'll see if Flash can keep on the defenses. I mean, if anyone can do this, Flash can. Tons of drop ships in the air for the Terminator. And let's see what he does, if he has to use them for defense or not. I mean, he invested a lot in those 2 bases. Yeah, he's pulling down with a lot of tanks, though. Going to get the tanks and take out the 5 o'clock position for Fantasy, which is basically undefended at the moment. There comes Fantasy, defensive matrix of one tank, defensive matrix of the tank that was closest to the siege tanks. So if Flash wasn't paying attention and would have gone for that first, which would work out in Fantasy's favor. So Fantasy just working his way up to the 2 o'clock bases, just hovering outside of that. And Fantasy was forced to lift off his command center down at the 5 o'clock, which is definitely going to hurt him. He's going to be way economically behind if he can't take down Flash's bases. But both players are starting to even up a bit as far as population count goes. 191 for Flash, 167 for Fantasy, which should shoot up soon. Yes, 175 now from him, so they're both getting close to max. There comes Flash sacrificing some SCVs to free up population and allow him to get some more strong ground troops out in the map. Let's look at the upgrades for a second. Come on, observers. I'm not sure which tank that is. Alright, there is Flash's tanks. He got +2 attack, no armor. We got about 2 armor, 3 attack on Fantasy's troops. Really been focusing on those upgrades. Another defensive matrix from Fantasy, working his way down to kill this exposed base from Flash. Flash was holding this high ground, keeping the 5th base from mining and protecting his own base at the same time. But looks like this is finally going to fall apart. Yeah, the science vessel gets the vision of the high grounds of Fantasy. Didn't really have much trouble defending that. Still 3 tanks, though. 3 tanks on the high ground, holding for now. It's going to keep that 5th base from mining for now. And Flash hasn't been able to do much with these dropships. I don't know if they're full of truth. Whoa, Fantasy's getting a bunch of Wraiths in the air. So if the Wraiths intercept the dropships, this could be bad times, especially if they're filled with troops. But here comes Flash. He's working his way down, going to try to clean this up, I guess. He's brought every single dropship down to the 5 o'clock position. Here come cloaked Wraiths incoming for Fantasy. He can snipe these dropships. He knows where the dropships are, so he just got to get in there. But no, the dropships dropped their payload at the 5 o'clock, so kind of a missed opportunity from Fantasy. He's taking care of the 3 o'clock position. There he goes for the dropships. Should be able to snipe every single one, which will put Flash quite a bit behind. Yeah, Fantasy gets every dropship. So Flash's whole game plan is going to have to change a bit, unless he really wants to devote the time to rebuilding every single dropship, which I highly doubt he will. That would kind of be suicide at this point, because he needs something to deal with the Wraiths in the air. He has some... he has the Goliaths down there, of course, to protect his base that he's building down at the 5 o'clock. I wonder if he floated over with that, or if that command center went down. I mean, there's so much going on right now. The map is full, so it's kind of a bit difficult for me. Okay, so the Wraiths still being pumped for Fantasy off of 3 starports. Really got a lot of Wraiths in the air, but more dropships being pumped by Flash, so he is still committed to the dropship strategy, even though they got shellacked by the Wraiths early, and the Wraiths going for more dropships. Like, okay, you gonna stick to dropships? Come on, pump your dropships. Hanging by the starports with nothing there to intercept them at all. So Flash is going to have a tough time with this Wraith build now. He has to rely on Goliaths to do this. Still trying to pump the dropships. It gets he has a couple still in the air, but he lost about 3 up at the 10 o'clock inside of his main. Crazy. So that's kind of grinding Flash down a bit. Still has almost a maxed army, of course, but his dropship strategy is going to be basically locked down. He's going to have a tough time now if he wants to continue making bases, because Fantasy's... he's going to work on the second 6 o'clock base. If he doesn't have that up already, I'm looking down there, can't quite tell. But there's another defensive matrix from Fantasy. Guys, just utilized defensive matrix like crazy in this game to draw most of the tank fire while he destroys Flash's tanks. Just some excellent play from Fantasy. And he's denied this Excuse me. Third base again. There's a Wraith. Intercept the dropships again. Crazy anti-dropship play from Fantasy and very stubborn move from Flash to commit to this. Still pumping dropships. Thinking that he'll have more success in the future. Trying to stay away from the... What is he doing? You're dropping Goliath, trying to get close enough. But Fantasy wasn't quite paying attention, so that works in Flash's advantage. It drops enough Goliaths to fend back the Wraiths. So the Wraiths kind of darting back. Starports are not pumping for Fantasy, so it could be just focusing on the ground troops right now. But he still has a healthy grouping of Wraiths out. Dropship still in the air for Flash. And he's trying to move down to this position. Some SCVs being sacrificed by Fantasy now, too, to free up supply. Here comes... Oh, Wraith's trying to snipe some more dropships there, I think. But now Fantasy has secured the 3 o'clock position. He can take that base for himself, which he's floating over with the command center to do so already. So, going to try to take the 3 o'clock. See how long he can hold this. Because Flash somehow is mining down at the 5 o'clock position, trying to create a defensive grid down there. Keep that base, not only keep the base, but deny the 5 o'clock natural from Fantasy, which will be critical coming up in this game, since we are starting to mine out the minerals on the map. There's a lot of dropships from Flash. Is going to try to drop on top of Fantasy troops, but backs off from that attack. Surprisingly, Flash abandoned that 12 o'clock base, so he's going to let that go down and try to move down. Well, he tried to move down with the dropships, but I think he saw the Wraiths and got spooked a bit, so forced to back off a little. Both players have been just exceptional in denying the bases in this game. Yeah, normally you'd have one half of the map for each now, but they both just been battling so hard that they split up the map quite a bit. Flash mining down the 5 o'clock is the example there. As Fantasy trying to get minerals from the 3 o'clock. Flash's 12 o'clock going to go down again if he doesn't lift off. Tanks in position to take that down at a moment's notice. But let's see here. That's a ton of turrets to intercept another drop. Attempted drop from Flash, since he's so focused on these drop ships. Flash killing his drop ships. Yeah, Flash is trying to free up supply by killing his own drop ships. Boy. I think it was because he built too many. He already had a lot in the air and he built more, which I think was a mistake from him. Maybe he was anticipating them going down anyway, but he didn't need more dropships than that. Since he's reaching maxed again, he's got to get rid of some of them to work on the ground troops. There comes Fantasy again up the 2 o'clock, getting closer and closer with a huge tank line. Oh boy. So the science vessel in yet again. Saw how effective it was earlier, taking down the bases up here. But Flash is going for a counterattack, not going to work on the defense. He's going for a counterattack drop, moving in with his barracks first to get the scout on how many turrets are in, and hoping that the barracks can take most of the turret hits. They do! The turrets were focused on the barracks instead of the dropship, so here comes Flash, going to try to drop everything. Doom drop inside the main. Dropships dropping on the high ground area, a bit clumped up though, which makes it more difficult to drop in. Fantasy surrounding everything. Oh, failed drop from Flash. Oh boy, let's see if he's going to try again though. Not sure. Oh, the Wraith's intercepting the dropships. So Flash forced to drop everything down at the 6 o'clock, right next to his own, right next to Fantasy's base anyway. Oh boy. So the Wraiths chasing down the dropships. Again, every single dropship going down. Flash looking perturbed. It's like, well, this isn't working. It keeps pumping dropships, and Fantasy keeps killing them with Wraiths. And Flash so far hasn't had much of an answer to this, other than dropping Goliaths when he's in trouble. But other than that, he hasn't been able to stop that at all. Had no more Valks out because Valks at this stage in this late game TVT would not be of any use. So he can't really use those. He could build his own Wraiths, but he only has a couple of starports, a few starports. So that's not really viable at this point either. So now the players are going to fight for the minerals. Another dropship being sniped by Fantasy as it tries to move over. Oh, Fantasy, you and your Wraiths today. Yeah, Fantasy has pulled out some excellent Wraith attacks in this game. But anyway, let's see. Tanks hanging outside the natural expansion for Flash. And Fantasy, he's still hanging outside of those 2 o'clock bases, but he's grouping up with all of his units outside of the 2 o'clock bases. So he might eventually go for this attack, which Flash would have a lot of problems with. He has dropships, of course, to drop some tanks on top of the high ground. But here comes Fantasy, unsieging all of his tanks. He's moving in, he's going to A-move. Try to throw his Vultures and Goliaths out front to take the hits from the tanks. Siege up here, get a little bit closer. He's just inching forward with that huge tank line. But where are Flash's dropships? Flash's dropship still at the natural expansion, going for another counterattack, I think. Just moving into the middle, skirting by that 9 o'clock position, being intercepted again by the Wraiths. Wraiths have been in the right place in the right time. Almost every single drop from Flash in this game. So snipe more dropships. Flash, even though he lost a couple of dropships there, he was able to drop the payload and inch forward a bit with these tanks. But now Fantasy is pulling back with some of his tanks, and he's got the Wraiths for the vision and to attack these troops. So this attack from Flash going to peter out outside the natural. And Fantasy still has that 3 o'clock base secure, and he's probably has better mineral intake. Yeah, he definitely has better mineral intake than Flash now. Flash has been hoarding minerals because he needs to move out and take another base. Oh boy, defensive matrix of a Goliath is pushing forward. Fantasy finally going to try to take the 2 o'clock on the high ground, and once he takes this base, this could be it for Flash. If he has no answer to this attack, Flash will have a very hard time getting back in the game. This is a critical base up here at the 2 o'clock. So Flash, he drops some tanks up at this 2 o'clock, right out of range of Fantasy Siege tanks, but the Wraiths are making their way up to the 2 o'clock to intercept more dropships and keep Flash from resupplying troops up here and continuing to defend. Oh boy. So, let's see. Yeah, nothing at the 12 o'clock. That 12 o'clock is bare. No command center there yet at all. You know, the healthy patches of minerals all over the place, but dropships being sniped again by the turrets and the Wraiths. Fantasy 2 steps ahead of Flash as far as the rest of his drops have been today. Once he caught on that Flash is going to stick to this dropship strategy, he's been building turrets everywhere and making sure he's in the right place at the right time with those Wraiths, which has worked out well. But now Flash dropping a bunch of troops inside this main. He's finally able to skirt by Fantasy's defenses, make his way inside the main. Not quite a doom drop, but he's kind of nestled himself inside the main to go for the production buildings. More dropships sniped. I'd like to know exactly how many dropships have been sniped in this game. An insane number, I'm sure. I'm kidding. No one go back and count that. That would be an extreme waste of time. I remember when I was wondering how many turrets the Flash built in one game versus a Zerg, and someone actually went back to count them. It's like 100 and something. No, guys, you need to do other things. Go out, exercise, eat a nourishing meal, get 8 hours of sleep. There you go. You can do that besides counting the amount of dropships that we're taking down in this game. But okay. Wraiths killing the Goliaths. Once the Goliaths go down, there would be no more defense for the tanks. So that attack going to go down. Flash mining gas up at the 2 o'clock, but nothing else. He can't get close enough to the minerals to mine there. So Fantasy has played an interesting game. Even though he was behind Flash in bases, Flash kind of overextended himself. So Fantasy thought, well, slow and steady wins the race in this one. As long as I harass, deny bases, it won't matter if I have 3/4 of the map or not. I just got to keep Flash from building up. And so far, he's done an excellent job of that, denying mining up at this 2 o'clock. And Fantasy has a couple of options for new bases. Once he gets rid of the 5 o'clock that Flash has installed down there, he'll be able to take the 5 o'clock natural, and the other 6 o'clock base is up for grabs. And Fantasy going for the game ender now, I think, kind of unsieging his tanks, looking for an opportunity to get close to this little outgrove of troops the Flash has up at the 2 o'clock. I think it's only a matter of time for these troops at the 2 o'clock from Flash, unless he can ferry more troops in with the dropships to defend. Otherwise, I don't see these troops living much longer. Alright, there's Fantasy getting closer to the 5 o'clock base. Some tanks, another defensive matrix of the tank. Takes out the tanks on the high ground. Flash's tank goes for the D-Matrix tank just as Fantasy planned. So that worked out well. Takes out 2 tanks on the high ground, which were aiding in the defense of the 5 o'clock. Let's see. Wraiths cloaking again. Not too many out now, but still doing a great job. Oh, bunch of Wraiths coming in from Fantasy. There were the rest of his Wraiths. I was wondering where they were. Snipes the rest of the dropships. GG from Flash. Losing all his bases, and Fantasy was kind of tightening the noose near the end of that game, giving himself plenty of options as far as where he wanted to expand next. Okay, well played first set from both. Let's move into the second set now.